Gina. Today we're going to learn how to make several different earrings with a simple spiral wire wrapping technique. Now, I have used several different shapes and sizes of beads here. Most of them are larger. They're 12 millimeter, 14 millimeter. This is a disc shape, this is a square shape, and this is a check leaf. Now, you can use any type of bead you want, so I'm not going to give you a specific list of beads that you need. You can use any shape, any size. You just have to adjust the amount of wire you use according to the shape of bead you use or the size of bead you use. This is to inspire you to use this technique on any type of bead you want, doing anything you want, so it doesn't have to end up like mine did either. It just gives you an idea of what you can do. Okay, so as you can see, I've just picked out a few of my larger beads that I thought I would like to make some simple wired earrings with. Most of these are gemstones, some of them are glass, just whatever I decided that I wanted, different shapes, different sizes, and I'm going to show you some basic ways to turn these into earrings. So I've got a few bead caps if I decide to use them. Just whatever you have that's extra and you have just a few beads of, you can make some really cute little earrings with. Now we're going to need some wire cutters, flat nose or chain nose pliers, and some round nose pliers for this project. You may also want to use a ruler if you want to measure out how much wire you're using for each one to keep them consistent. That's fine too. And I'm using some artistic wire today. This is 20 gauge. Let me get real close so you can see what it says on here. This is what I'm going to use, and I'm using a 20 gauge, and it's soft, so that's easy to bend. You can get wires in different types of strengths or hardnesses, I guess I should say. And some of them are half hard, some of them are soft, some of them are very hard, like memory wire, which is hard to turn. You will not be able to turn and manipulate that wire like you can this wire. Let's go ahead and cut a little piece. We're just going to do, the first one, we're just going to do a simple individual wrap of one bead. I have a piece of tiger's eye here, and it is 12 millimeters round. I have cut myself about 3.5, 4 inches of wire here. Let's see, yeah, 3.5 inches of wire. And I just do that. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to have an exact amount like I'm using. But I do that so that I know when I make my second earring how much wire I started with the first one, so that they're basically the same. Now, I want to just have an individual dangle with this bead here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a stop on the end. And the way I'm going to do that is by turning a tiny spiral. And so when we turn a spiral, we're going to go to the very end of the wire here, and the tip of our round nose pliers, so that it's a very small turn that we take. We make a very small loop to start with. So I'm at the very tip right here, just barely have my wire sticking out there. Try to get to the end as close as you can so that and still have a grip on it, and then just make one tiny little loop. So I turned it halfway, I'm turning my pliers over, and I'm turning it all the way around until it touches my wire, or close to it. So I'll show you what I've got. And now I'm going to put my pliers back in here and just slightly turn it a little more. Then I'm going to put my round nose pliers down. I'm going to pick up my chain nose pliers. I'm going to hold on to the loop, flatten like this. Just lay it flat in your flat nose pliers. And then just very gently start to turn by lifting and squeezing your pliers and turning it slightly. This way you're going to get a little spiral started. My first loop was a little bit bigger than I usually like them to be, so it's not going to be quite as nice of a spiral, but it'll work. And I'm just going to turn it several times until I have a nice little spiral like this. And then I'm going to lift my wire so it's flat, everything's flat like this. I'm going to take this and lift it up, straight up like that. So now I have what looks like a little golf club here. A strange little golf club, but you know. Now, let me back off just a little. Now I'm going to take my bead and I'm going to drop it down. And this spiral is going to stop everything. So I take it at this point and I just put it on my bead mat and squash the little spiral down. Now it depends. If you want it straight on the very bottom, then you'll have to manipulate it a little different. If you want it kind of to one side, however you want it. I want mine kind of to one side. Sometimes I like to make it a little longer and actually, or a bigger spiral and have it come all the way up the side of the bead too. That works nicely. But now I have a stop, a little spiral on the bottom. And now I need to make a top for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my round nose pliers right up against my bead, and I'm going to bend it over. Now you can see I'm a little ways further down the pliers. The further down you go, the bigger bends and loops you're going to get. Now I'm going to bring my pliers up, and I'm going to go right into the bend of that wire and just rest my pliers in that bend. And then I'm going to bring my excess wire over the top of my pliers. As I do this, I'm going to very gently roll my pliers with the wire. Now, then I'm going to straighten it up because I bent it to the side. And this is what you should have, a loop like so. Now I'm going to take my pliers and put it on my loop. This is very soft wire. And I'm going to, you can use your pliers, but since this is so soft, I'm just going to use my hands. And I'm going to start to turn loops, nice tight loops around the excess wire. And I'm just going to continue turning, even on top of the bead here. I'm going to grab my pliers now. And make a nice little spiral on top of my bead. And I'll just bring this wire in the best I can. If I can't bring it in all the way, squeeze it in, then I'll cut it off. But usually I can squeeze it in. Now I'll just cut that excess off here. And tack it down a little so it's not sharp. Just tuck it underneath the rest of the wires. And now I will arrange my wire the way that I want it to look. And here is my wrapped gemstone. And I can just slide an ear wire on here. I can put a jump ring if I want it to have a little bit more movement. Or I can just open my ear wire like so. So there's a loop on the ear wire, and all I've done is move it, twist it. So that way I'm opening it from side to side. Don't ever pull them open, just turn them. And I will show you what I've got here if I don't knock my lamp over. So all I've done is just open this wire like so. And then I'm just going to slide this one on here. And then I'm going to, the same twisting movement, I'm going to close that ear wire. And now I have a cute little gemstone earring. As you can see. Get my wire to be a little bit straighter there. And that's one way to make one little simple one bead earring. Okay, so this time I'm going to use this little square shaped rose quartz bead, and I'm going to wrap it just a little differently. It's basically the same concept. We're still going to start with a spiral, and we're going to wrap this one just a little differently, so it's just a little bit fancier. And on this one, I'm going to measure out about 6 inches of wire. So I'll just put my wire on here, and I will cut a piece here. It doesn't have to be exact, just it gives me a basic guideline to know when I'm going to make my second earring what I did with my first one. If you'd like, you can use some plastic covered pliers to straighten your wire. I don't really think that that's necessary for what I'm doing today, but I will show you that in a future video. Okay, so now I am going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to start with a loop. So I'm going to go to the very tip of my pliers, and I'm going to try to make a nice round start. So I'm just bending it up, and then going to make a nice little round loop here. I'm going to show you what I have. This nice little tiny round loop. Now again, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers. I could also use my flat nose pliers, which actually works a little bit better for turning spirals. So I'll go ahead and do this. I'm grabbing a hold of it nice and flat in my pliers, and I'm just going to start to turn a little bit at a time, pulling my wire nice and tight against my existing loop here. And you can go around as many times as you like. Just make sure that your earrings match, as you know, so that when you do your second one, do the same amount. Here I'm going to make this a pretty good size one because I want to actually see my nice little spiral on my bead. So I'm just continuing to move gently, making sure I'm not marring my wire too much. My pliers don't seem to be very smooth, so just do it as gently as you can. My pliers seem to be a little bit rough. I've only had them for 10 years, so yeah, it's probably time to get a new pair. You can put tape over the ends of your pliers too if you don't want them to mar your wire at all. And now I have a nice spiral, like so. I think I'll take one more turn here. Make it good size, like so, my spiral. Now I am going to put my bead on here before I bend it, and I'm going to bend the spiral up over the front of my bead, like so. Makes a nice little pretty focal on the bead there. Then I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to turn a loop up here. So I'm going to go a little bit further down because I want some room to wrap my wire around the top, because I think I want to have some extra wrap looking stuff on the top of my bead here. So I'm going to go a little bit further down my plier. Then I'm going to bend my wire over one side of the plier. I'm going to move my plier into that bend. And then I am going to bring my wire up over this end of the plier, and then bring it down around, kind of move your pliers around, like so, so that you get a loop like this. And you can bend it over to the side a little bit more so that it stays centered. Bring your wire around until it makes a nice circle like that. Then put your flat nose pliers over the top of your loop and begin to bend. Again, you can use your pliers if you want. I'm just using my hands. And as you see, I'm trying to make sure that each wrap that I take is close to the wrap previous. I have quite a bit of space here, so I'm just going to keep wrapping. And then when I get to the top of my bead, making sure it's getting tight against the bottom part of my spiral here, I'm just going to continue wrapping flat over the top, making a spiral, laying the wire on top of the wire that I've already laid so that it makes a nice spiral. I'm going to turn my loop to the side here and continue wrapping Now it is getting bigger than my bead, and that's okay because I want to bend this over my bead, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Okay, so basically I've just laid it over the top. There's some extra on either side. I'm going to cut this length here right up against the other wire, the previous bend of the wire there. And then I'm going to bring that down underneath, and I'm just going to kind of push this down over my bead, like so. And it kind of just makes a little ruffly looking spiral. It's kind of what I like to call the messy wire look. And it's controlled mess, though. It's not just, you know, willy-nilly put on there. It's controlled, so it looks like it's supposed to look sloppy that way, like this. Yep. And then we can just open an ear wire. Or a jump ring. We can add a jump ring to it too if we want. But I'm just going to see if I can get this just right on my ear wire. If you need to turn your loop so that your earring hangs correctly, you can just grab a hold of your loop and turn it with your flat nose. So that's what that looks like. Cute little thing. So let's move on to another shape. This time we're going to spiral down the bead a little bit more. So I've got this 12 millimeter crystal that I'm going to use, and I'm going to cut 7 inches, around 7 inches of wire this time, and grab my round nose pliers. And then I'm just going to make a loop on the end here for my stop. So I'm going to bend it just a little ways down. Not much, just enough to make a loop. And then I'm going to grab a hold of the very end. Let's get close. Oops, other way. So I'm going to grab a hold of the very end here. And I'm going to make my loop a little bit bigger this time, so I'm going to move down my pliers a little. Grab the end and just roll a loop. And close it. And I want to straighten this out because my wire's getting all bent around my fingers here. And that's what I have. Just a basic loop. Now, let's back off a little. I'm going to slide my bead down the piece of wire, bring it all the way down to my loop, like so. And then I am going to grab my round nose pliers again, and a little bit further down the pliers, about halfway down the pliers, maybe a little bit more than halfway, I'm going to bend my wire over my pliers. Then I'm going to move my pliers up into the bend of the wire, and I'm going to wrap this around and start to move my pliers so that I can bring my wire around into a loop. Now, if you find that your loop goes to one side, you can always grab the far side of it away from you and just bend it a little bit, like so, and that will center it again. Then I am going to grab a hold of this loop, like so, bring my wire tight up against my pliers, or not tight, but right up against parallel to it, and then I'm going to start to turn my wire. And as I get down towards the bead, I'm just going to continue to turn into spirals. I'm just going to do looser spirals. It's not going to spiral all the way down around the bead because of the shape of, if the wire wants to slide up, just do them loose like so. And then come down around the bottom loop of the bead. So just keep spiraling and then bring your wire down. And then go around the bottom bead and start creating a spiral around the bottom loop here. Just make it as neat as you can. And then I'm going to cut this off here. And kind of tuck it under. So I'm going to grab my chain nose, just kind of tuck it under my spiral, the end there, like so. Now I'm going to spread these spirals out over the bead. So I'm just going to take my thumbnails, I'm just going to kind of push it down and start spreading my spiral out so that it actually covers my entire bead here. That's why you don't want them to be really tight, the spirals that you make, just enough to where you can move them, but keep them neat. And then straighten out my loop here. And this is what I have. I have a spiraled bead like this. Now I'm going to put an ear wire on that. I'm going to play with my spiral a little bit more because I want it to be just a little bit more spread out. Like so. And then I'm going to grab an ear wire and open it just like we've been doing. Find the opening on this ear wire. And I'm going to put my bead on there, close it, and now I have a set of pretty little wrapped crystals, and just have the spiral that spreads down around. Now you can see this loop I made a little bit bigger than this loop, and this loop is hidden a little bit better. So, you know, you can judge how big you want to make your loops. I made that one just a little bit big. If you want to, you can always adjust it a little bit. You can also take a jump ring and slide another bead that you have made onto these to make another dangle, or you can just squish those loops down on the bottom. Just push them down like so, so that they don't stick up as much. However you want to do it. But that's how to spiral down around the bead. And those are pretty too. Okay, this time I have a check leaf bead. It's check glass. And I have cut 3.5 inches of my wire, and I have 3/8 seed beads. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wire, and somewhere right about in the middle, I'm going to just bend it in half. So I'm going to place it right about here on my pliers here, just not quite halfway down, and then I'm going to bend it in half. It doesn't have to be perfectly in half. One wire can be a little longer than the other, just not a lot. And then I'm just going to keep bending it down into a loop like this. Then I'm going to shape my loop a little bit better just by pulling the ends. Then I'm going to flatten it a bit by putting my chain nose pliers on it, like so. And this is what I have. Now I am going to pick up 3 of my seed beads, and I'm using the longer wire. So if you have a longer wire, use the longer wire. I'm going to pick up 3 of my seed beads, and then I'm going to pick up my leaf bead, and I'm going to put the big side on first so that the leaf lays correctly like this. And then I am going to go to the end of my wire here. Let's get a little closer. And we're going to start to turn a spiral. So I'm going to just use the very tip of my pliers to make a little tiny loop, like so. Let me straighten it out so you can see it, like so. And then I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers, hold onto my loop, and just start to turn my spiral. Now these ones I'm not making real tight spirals, I'm doing them a little looser, so I'm letting there be a little bit more wire. I'm not pulling it real tight against my other wire as I'm turning it. Just kind of loosely. Now I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to hold these seed beads just a little bit away from my crisscross of wire up here, and I'm going to bring this one up, this spiral up, and kind of over to the side of my bead, like so. So that it just kind of sticks out the side here. And we'll adjust that several times to get it to be just how we want it. And then I'm going to go back up to the top. Now you can see my loop is kind of to the side because of me messing with it. I'm going to bring it straight up, like so. I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to wrap my wire, bring it up close to my pliers, kind of parallel to it, and I'm going to wrap my wire around once like this. Now that I have a nice little wrap there, I'm going to take my excess wire and I'm going to make another loose spiral. So I'm going to start the very tip of my pliers and roll a little circle, like so, and then another rather loose spiral. So I'm just kind of gently rolling it around without bringing it in real tight against my wire that I've already curved. Just bring it in and just keep rolling it. And roll it and roll it and roll it until you get it right in front of your seed beads, basically, like this. Now, the thing with this is once you make one, the second one may not be identical to it. Just get it as close as you can. So that's what that looks like. And this is just an idea. You can twirl them around any way you want. You can make them any way you want to make them. This is just to give you an idea. Here's the other one I made, and as you can see, they're not identical, but they're close. And then I am going to go ahead and grab an ear wire and put this on here. And these are just ideas. This is just a way to use a basic spiral with wire to make all kinds of different little fancy designs. Now I just put my wire on backwards, so pay attention to what you're doing and put your wire on correctly. Or maybe I didn't. Let me see. No, I did okay. I was okay. Probably put them on backwards on the other ones. That's all right. I'll close it. I can always fix that. That's not a big deal. There, and then I'm going to put another one on. This one. And now I have a cute little pair of earrings. Now, see, I used the opposite sides of the beads, but these beads aren't exactly the same anyway, so doesn't really matter. But that's what that looks like. I'll probably flip this around fix my bead. So all I have to do is turn it and tighten it like so. See? There we go. Now they look more alike. There we go. And so, like I said, that's just an idea. I can also take these and maybe stick the spiral up higher on the bead. Maybe I'll like that better. So you can just play with them. Maybe I do like that better. There. That keeps the bead in there tighter too. So any way you want to do it, that's another way to use the simple spiral. For this one, I have about 3.5, just a tiny bit over 3.5, maybe 3 3/4 inch of wire. And I have a opaque aquamarine gemstone here that is kind of a disc shape. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to start again with another spiral. So on one end, I'm going to use the small end of my pliers and start a loop again. And make a little loop like so. Then I'm going to pick up my flat nose pliers. And I'm going to begin to turn a loop. This doesn't have to be an incredibly tight loop. Or spiral, I mean, just a nice spiral. So I'm just going to turn it against the wire that I'm holding in my opposite hand here, gently. These flat nose pliers are not nice to this wire. Yep, guys, I think I need another pair of flat nose pliers. So I'm going to use my chain nose. And I'm just going to turn this about there. Let's get you closer so you can see what I'm doing. I hope I was in frame. But that's where I'm going to end, right there. And then I'm going to slide this through my bead. And then, once I get it in my bead, I'm going to hold my bead up pretty tight against it. Just steady. And then I'm going to roll this over the top of my bead, just like so. Then on this side, I'm going to bring the wire that's remaining over the top of my bead. I'm going to hold on to it tight, and I'm going to bring it all the way to the center of my bead like this, and then I'm going to bend it up. And then I am going to begin making a spiral. So on this end, I'll bring it down towards the bead into a loop like this. And then I'm going to grab my chain nose, since my flat nose are not very nice to my wire, and I'm going to start turning another spiral. And I'm just going to keep turning it. Now, I've made this spiral kind of tight, and I need to loosen it just slightly, so I'm going to pull it apart just a little bit by pulling down on it, just so that I can get an air wire in my spiral. So if you wrap it a little looser than I did to start with, you don't have to do this, but I'm just moving it just enough so that I can put a wire in there. And then I'm going to kind of squash it with my chain nose pliers, just kind of squash it down so that it gives it some strength. It hardens the wire a little bit and sets it. Arrange it where you want it to be on your bead here. I think I'm going to bring this forward one more time. These are my plastic nose pliers here. I'm going to bring one more roll here. Just play with it until you get it to look like you want it to look. And then I stretch it away just a little bit, and I'm going to put an ear wire on there. And that's what that looks like. My previous one looks better because it seems like when I'm not on camera I do better. So this is what this set looks like right there. And that's just another way to make your spiral earrings. In using the spiral and using wire and using a gemstone, you can come up with a billion different ways to make some cute little earrings. These always sell well. People like them, especially if you use gemstones. People like gemstones. And here is what we have made today. Just using a little bit of wire and a few beads. And some of your bigger beads that you set aside and haven't used because you're into weaving or whatever, this works perfect for. So, hope you enjoyed this video and make yourself some earrings. Bye-bye.